Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. The twin suns of planet Tharxis hung low in the sky, painting the battlefield with yellow heat and orange dust. The alien soldiers of the Varnock Empire stood in rows, armor shining, tusks raised, and voices loud with laughter. They were 7 feet tall, covered in red scales and muscles thicker than steel pipes. And across the desert field, stepping off a slow, dusty human transport shuttle, were the humans. Thin, short, wearing simple armor, carrying rifles, calm faces, no tanks, no war beasts. Just soldiers with helmets, boots, and dry expressions. The Varnock laughed harder. "These are the ones we were warned about?" one shouted. "Where are their fangs?" another growled. "Where are their war machines?" a third asked. "These soldiers, they have no teeth." First impressions, the alien commander, General Korthak, marched forward with his chest puffed out. He stood in front of the human squad leader, towering over him. "You bring no weapons strong enough, no beasts, no fear," he said, sneering. The human, Captain Decker, stood calmly, his helmet under his arm. "We don't need to scare you," Decker replied. "We just need to win." Korthak laughed in his face. "How will you do that with nothing but bones and boots?" Captain Decker said nothing. He simply turned back to his unit and gave the order. "Camp perimeter. No fire, minimal sound. Daylight drills only." The humans moved fast. They didn't argue. They didn't brag. They just set up tents, scanners, and equipment with practiced silence. The Varnock watched from their base and shook their heads. "They look like soft meat." One alien chuckled. "No claws, no roars, just walking corpses," said another. "They are not warriors," Korthak grinned. "They are soldiers without teeth." That night, the Varnock held a feast. Roasted meat, alien wine, and fire songs. They sang of victory and the weak species they had crushed before. The humans were just another name to add to the list, they believed. While they laughed and drank, the human camp remained dark and silent. No music, no lights. Just shadows moving quietly. Captain Decker sat by a crate, checking his datapad. He looked up at the stars. "They'll stop laughing by tomorrow," he said. Another soldier nearby raised an eyebrow. "Should we tell them what's coming?" Decker shook his head. "No. Let them laugh one more night." From behind a supply tent, a low growl rumbled in the dark. Glowing yellow eyes blinked once, then vanished back into the shadows, whispers in the wind. The next morning, 2 Varnock scouts didn't report back. They had gone to watch the humans again, to laugh some more, to make jokes. They didn't return. Later, a search team found one of their rifles, torn in half. No blood, no prints, just deep claw marks in the sand. General Korthak scowled. "Did they finally bring something worth fearing?" he muttered. One of his officers replied, "We saw no machines, no beasts, nothing large enough to do this." Korthak growled. "Then, maybe their teeth are just hiding in the shadows." The calm before the howl that afternoon, the Varnock camp fell silent. No more feasting, no more jokes. They watched the humans closer now, still no tanks, still no drones, still no monsters. But now, the humans stood taller. Their gear looked ready, their eyes sharper. Captain Decker walked toward the edge of the desert cliff. "General," Korthak waited for him. "You hide something," Korthak accused. Decker smiled softly. "You asked where our strength is." "And?" Captain Decker pointed to the horizon. "It's coming tomorrow." That night, the wind over Tharxis carried an unfamiliar sound. A distant, deep howl, not mechanical, not alien, earthborn, fierce, hungry, and, for the first time, the Varnock soldiers stopped laughing. The second night on planet Tharxis was colder than the first. Strange, for a planet with 2 suns. The Varnock guards around the alien base shivered under their armor. The desert winds weren't just cold. They were quiet, too quiet. No insects, no sandstorms, no distant howls of local wildlife. Only silence. and silence in war was never a good sign. The disappearance. 2 Varnock patrol guards marched along the late southern ridge, strong, proud. They laughed softly as they passed the edge of the human camp. Still no tanks. One whispered, still no beasts. The other chuckled, still no teeth. They kept walking and were never seen again. The discovery at dawn, a scout team was sent to search. They found nothing. No bodies, no broken armor, no sign of a struggle, only long tracks. In the sand, 4-legged, deep and moving fast. The claws had dug into the ground like blades, and near the edge of the trail, a piece of armor, Varnock armor, crushed like paper. The fear begins. General Korthak examined the remains himself. He growled, "Predator." One of his officers shook his head. "Not native. No animal here runs like that. And no alien creature leaves tracks in perfect formation." Korthak narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" The officer pulled up a scan. "There are more tracks. Now. Same shape, same size, moving in packs." Korthak's voice lowered. "How many?" "Too many. The first howl that night, it happened. Not near the base. Not far in the desert, but right outside the Varnock walls. A sound rolled through the air like thunder through a pipe, a howl. Deep, long, bone-shaking. Varnock soldiers dropped their weapons. Some froze in place. Others raised their rifles wildly, firing at shadows. But the howl came again, this time from the opposite side of the base, and then from behind, and then from above. It was not one. It was a pack. Inside the human camp captain, Decker sat by the campfire, calm as ever. His soldiers cleaned their rifles, checked their armor, and shared quiet glances. They didn't speak. They didn't look scared. They looked ready. Decker sipped from his metal cup. "They've heard it now." A nearby soldier smiled. "Think they know what it means?" "They will," Decker said, "before the night ends." Behind the tents, something large moved. Not a machine. Not a man. A shadow with 4 legs, eyes like fire, and teeth sharp enough to tear steel. The Varnock reaction inside the alien command. Tent alarms blared. Scouts ran in yelling. Movement outside the walls. No energy signatures, just heat trails. "They're fast. Too fast for turrets to lock." Korthak stood in the center of the storm. His fists clenched. This is trickery, human fear games. But then, one of the outer guards screamed over the comms. "They're in the base!" Gunfire, screams. Then, nothing. The unseen Strika team of elite Varnock soldiers was dispatched to find the breach. They found the southern wall untouched, but inside the base, near the weapon cache, they saw claw marks on steel and blood. Not human blood. Varnock blood. Back at the fire, Decker looked up at the stars. He wasn't smiling now. He was remembering. Remembering the earth fields, the training grounds, the long days teaching the pack how to fight beside men, how to guard, how to stay hidden, how to wait until it mattered most. He whispered to no one in particular. They thought we came alone. Behind him, a dog sat still, not barking, not panting, just waiting. Its ears twitched. Then, without a sound, it stood and vanished into the dark. That night, the Varnock stopped mocking the humans, because in the shadows of their own base, they began to hear whispers, and footsteps with no owner, and growls that shook their bones. The humans had no fangs, but they had brought something worse. They brought the pack. The morning after the howls, the Varnock soldiers stood in silence. No one laughed. No one bragged. They just stared at the damaged wall inside their own base. Claw marks, deep and clean, sliced through armor plating like it was paper. The strongest. Guards had been taken without a sound. No alarms triggered. No alerts. Just gone. Denial ends. General Korthak slammed his fist into the hollow table. Enough. These are not monsters, just animals. We've fought worse. One of his officers hesitated. Sir, animals don't plan ambushes. They don't strike one side, then vanish from the other. Another added, and they don't leave bodies in perfect lines. Korthak growled, but deep down even he felt it. Fear. Inside the human camp, Captain Decker walked between his men, checking gear. But his real concern wasn't the soldiers. It was the handlers. Each one sat beside their partner, the dogs. Not just normal dogs. These were Earth warhounds, each born and trained beside a single human. They didn't bark. They didn't growl for show. They watched, they listened, and when ordered, they vanished like ghosts and returned like thunder. Meet one. Ghost was the largest of the pack, jet black with streaks of gray and eyes like molten gold. His handler, Sergeant Mills, knelt beside him, whispering something. Only the dog could hear. Ghost didn't move. He waited. Then, Mills gave the signal. Ghost disappeared into the desert brush like a shadow on legs. No armor, no sound, just purpose. The ambush. That night, the Varnock sent a scout team to approach the human camp from the ridge. 5 trained assassins, no lights, silent steps, sharp blades. They never even made it past the second hill. A soft snarl echoed in the dark. Then silence. The next morning, their weapons were returned, laid neatly outside the alien base gates. Korthak stared at them. Clean, untouched, but covered in blood. The lesson of loyalty. Later that day, an alien reporter dared to approach the human camp under a white flag. He asked Captain Decker, "Why use animals? Is that not cruel?" Decker looked at him calmly. "You don't understand," he said. He whistled once. 6 dogs stepped into view. Different sizes, different shapes, each one standing beside a human. Decker pointed to one handler. She raised him since birth. He pointed to another. He carried his partner for 3 days after a mine blast. Then he stepped forward and said, "They're not animals. They're family. And no one fights harder than those who protect their own." The Varnock. Try to copy back in the alien camp. Korthak gave a new order. Capture one, study it, break it if you must. They set traps. They used bait. They failed. Every attempt ended in chaos. One Varnock soldier lost his hand. Another went missing. Entirely. And when they finally caught one dog using electric nets, it bit through the cables, escaped, and returned to its handler that same night, bleeding, injured, but alive. The handler hugged it tight. The dog licked his face once, then slept. The quiet. Between storms, that evening, the alien soldiers heard something strange. Laughter, but not from their side. From the human camp. A handler tossed a ball. The dog chased it. Children from the nearby human outpost giggled. The Varnock watched in silence, and one young alien soldier whispered, "They play with them, and still trust them in battle?" His captain replied, "They don't trust them, they love them." That night, General Korthak wrote in his war log, "We called them teeth, but they are more than that. They are brothers. And they do not fear death when they fight for the ones they love." Because on planet Tharxis, the enemy was no longer just the human soldier. It was the heart of the pack. The alien command center was tense. General Korthak stood before a large holomap, his claws tapping the edge of the table. Dozens of red dots blinked across the screen. Varnock. Patrols, supply posts, radar towers. Then 3 of those red dots vanished, offline. Again. Same pattern, same time, no warning. His second-in-command stepped forward. "That's the 3rd supply convoy in 2 days. No alarms triggered," another officer added. "And no survivors found." Korthak's eyes narrowed. "These dogs," he hissed. "They're not beasts." Unseen strategy. Back at the human camp, Captain Decker stood beside a large sand table. But it wasn't human soldiers placing markers. It was handlers. And beside each handler sat their war dog, ears up, eyes focused. The humans placed model towers, cargo crates, and terrain markers. Then, they waited. One by one, the dogs sniffed, circled, and tapped locations on the map with their paws or noses. Each time, Decker nodded. That's where they'll strike next. The soldiers didn't question it, because these weren't just pets. These were scouts, planners, partners, the failed trap. The Varnock tried to fight smart. They built a false supply base, bait, high walls, loud decoy signals, traps laid under crates, motion sensors on every corner. They waited 2 nights, then 3. Nothing came. On the 4th night, they finally relaxed. But in the morning, they found their real supply base burned to the ground, and the trap untouched. On the main gate, someone or something had scratched a word in 3 clean claw marks, wrong. The Bond as the weapon Sergeant Mills sat beside Ghost, his war dog, cleaning its metal paw guards. An alien drone camera watched from a distance, hidden in a tree. The drone's AI zoomed in, recording everything. Mills whispered to the dog, "Remember that sound? Left side first, right second, center last." Ghost barked once, short and sharp. 3 minutes later, Ghost and Mills ran a perfect sync drill through the field, without speaking. The drone tried to scan the technique, but suddenly, static. Before it could send data, it was ripped off the tree and destroyed by another dog behind it. The science behind the fear in. The Varnock lab, scientists studied torn armor, shattered bones, and half-eaten boots. One shook his head. They don't attack randomly. They go for the neck or the back of the knees. Weak points. Another added. Their bites are too clean, too focused, like they've been trained on our biology. A third whispered, they communicate, not just with sound, but with movement, with eyes. Korthak stood in silence. He finally spoke. They're not dogs. Everyone turned to him. They're soldiers in fur. Change in the wind later that week. A group of younger Varnock guards whispered by the watchtower. Do they come when the wind changes? One asked. No, said another. They come when you stop paying attention. A third added. They don't even breathe loud. They just appear, bite, and vanish. Their commander overheard. Cowards. You fear barking animals. Just then, a soft growl echoed from the shadows. They raised weapons, but saw nothing, only dust, and a single boot, left alone on the ground. The memory wall in the human camp, near the medical tent, there was a wall. On it hung photos, old Earth pictures of dogs who had fallen in battle. Each one had a name, a date, and a short phrase like, died saving his handler. Jumped on a mine to protect children. Never left his wounded partner behind. Aliens passing by didn't understand at first. Then one asked, why honor animals like warriors? Captain Decker answered, because they don't fight for orders. They fight for love. That's why they never quit. The Varnock came expecting war with humans, but what they got was war with loyalty, war with patience, war with creatures who didn't fight for power, but for the person beside them. And that's what made the pack impossible to stop, because loyalty bites harder than fear. The moons over Tharxis rose red that night. The wind was still. The sand didn't move. Even the air felt heavier, as if something ancient was watching from beyond the dunes. In the Varnock camp, soldiers spoke in whispers. Helmets were worn even, while sleeping. No one removed armor. No one left the walls alone. The howls had changed everything. Once they laughed at the humans. Now, they feared the silence between the howls more than the howl itself. One last joke Private Garn of the 12th Varnock unit tried to ease the tension. He stood near the fire pit and said with a forced grin, next time I see a dog, I'll tie a stake to my back. That way at least I'll die with good flavor. A few soldiers chuckled. Another added, maybe we should build armor for our necks. That seems to be their favorite bite. They all laughed a little harder. Too hard. But behind them, the fire suddenly flickered. Then a low growl rolled out. From the dark, everyone froze. One by one, the flames went out, and in the morning, Private Garn was gone. All that remained was his boots. Still standing. Blind panic, General Korthak snapped. Raise the lights. Arm the walls. Scan the skies and the ground. Drones launched. Floodlights swept across every inch of the outer ridge. But the motion sensors blinked endlessly. False triggers, ghost signals, disappearing heat signatures. Nothing stayed on screen longer than 2 seconds. One alien officer said, "Sir, the scanners can't follow them." Korthak slammed his fist down. "Then use eyes, use instincts, use everything." Inside, the human camp captain Decker sat under a tarp, polishing a metal tag. He didn't speak to his soldiers. He didn't check his gear. He just cleaned the small silver plate that read, "Max, never left my side." Sergeant Mills walked up carrying rations. "They're panicking, sir, just like you said." Decker nodded. They stopped laughing. Mills sat down. "What changed it?" Decker looked up at the stars. They saw what fear looks like when it has fur and teeth. The trap flipped. The Varnock had planned a midnight raid, a direct strike on the human camp. 5 elite squads, full stealth. Night vision. No sound. But by the time they reached the outer edge of the human zone, they were already surrounded. Not by humans. Not by drones. By dozens of glowing eyes in the dark. Yellow, red, blue. All low to the ground. All silent. Then, a single bark, one sharp sound. That was the signal. The pack attacked. The battle they never saw. Dogs moved like smoke. One through the legs, another over the walls. They hit hard, fast, with perfect timing. One soldier turned to fire, only to find his blaster gone, pulled from his grip, buried in sand. Another tried to run, but something latched onto his arm and threw him 6 feet sideways. The Varnock screamed, but the humans never even fired a shot. It wasn't a battle, it was a message. Fear becomes real, General Korthak ordered. A full retreat. Pull back to the armored base, lock the gates. But the gates didn't close, because someone or something had chewed through the power cables and written a word in the sand with its claws. Enough. That morning, no raids, no patrols, no training drills. The alien camp was silent. Korthak stood before his troops. His voice cracked as he spoke. "From now on, you do not step outside alone. You move in pairs. You sleep in armor. You do not speak their names." One young officer whispered, "You mean the humans?" Korthak growled. "No." His eyes scanned the shadows. "I mean the ones they brought with them." On that night, the war changed. Because the Varnock finally understood. You can shoot a soldier. You can outfly a drone. But you can't escape what moves through the dark, with love in its heart and fire in its bite. And so, the night the laughing stopped was the night the pack took control. The desert wind was hot, but it wasn't the sun. It was the heat of approaching engines. From the western cliffs, dozens of alien dropships burned across the sky like fire comets. The Varnock Empire had called in everything they had left. Mechs, drones, flamethrower tanks, shock troops, and elite command squads. General Korthak gave only one command: burn the humans and bury their dogs. The human response Captain Decker stood on a ridge near the outer defense wall of the human camp. His eyes scanned the horizon. The sky looked like a storm was coming, but it was all metal and fire. Beside him, the war dog sat in a perfect line, silent, waiting. Sergeant Mills approached, helmet in hand. "They're sending everything." Decker nodded. "That's good. Means they're scared." Mills looked at the dogs. "Will they survive this?" Decker whispered. "Not all of them." Then he raised his voice. "Pack handlers, final call. You know what to do." The final prep inside the camp, handlers knelt beside their dogs. There were no big speeches, no goodbye hugs, just hands on fur, foreheads gently pressed to snouts, and one final whisper, "Find me after." The pack moved out. low, focused, deadly. They didn't fear what was coming. They only feared failing their human. The invasion begins. Alien gunships fired first. Missiles rained down across the desert, shaking the ground. Varnock troops charged in, screaming through voice amplifiers, marching like iron. A flamethrower mech rolled forward, spewing fire. They expected humans to run. They expected chaos. Instead, they got a whistle. High, sharp, clear. And the desert answered with howls from every side. The pack had arrived. The dogs of war, unleashed. They didn't charge straight in. They came from the sides, the air ducts, the underground tunnels dug days earlier. One dog leapt from a boulder and ripped the cables off a command tank. Another dove beneath a mech and planted an EMP grenade, then ran just before the explosion took the legs out from under it. A squad of Varnock fired in panic only to realize they were shooting at each other's shadows. The dogs moved too fast, too smart, too coordinated. Each one knew where to be and who to trust. The moment of sacrifice. Near the west gate, one giant mech broke through the lines, heading straight for the human command post. Captain Decker raised his rifle, empty. He reached for a grenade, too far. And then, Ghost appeared, bleeding, burned, tired, but still running. He looked at Decker once, then charged the mech, straight into its legs, carrying 2 mines strapped to his sides. Decker screamed, "No!" But it was done. The explosion shook the sky. When the smoke cleared, the mech was gone, and so was Ghost. The enemy breaks. The Varnock forces began to retreat. No one told them to. They just ran, because behind every crate, every rock, every shadow, a dog waited, not for food, not for commands, but for the one who tried to hurt their human. The aftermath. The desert went quiet, again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of victory. Captain Decker walked across the battlefield, past the wounded, the broken, the burning machines. He saw Mills sitting on the ground holding Ghost's collar in both hands. No words, just a tear and a nod. Decker knelt beside him. "He was the best," he said softly. Mills replied, "They all are." That day the galaxy learned something new. It wasn't the guns, it wasn't the ships, it wasn't the soldiers. It was the ones with paws and teeth who stood their ground, even when they knew they wouldn't walk back. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke curled like fingers in the sky. Machines lay broken. Alien flags burned to ash. And the desert wind, once filled with howls and fire, now whispered only the names of the fallen. But among the wreckage walked survivors. And at the front of them, a group of dogs padded slowly through the sand. Some limped. Some were bruised. Some had only 3 legs now. But their heads were high, their eyes bright. They had come through fire and protected their humans. They had done what they were born to do. The World Watch's news spread fast across the galaxy, not from military broadcasts, but from a simple recording. It showed a war dog dragging its unconscious handler out of the fire. Showed another shielding a wounded child from falling debris. It showed Ghost's last charge toward the mech, his body small, the explosion massive, and when it ended 4 words appeared on the screen. They knew what love was. The alien courtroom weeks later, the Varnock Empire stood in front of the Galactic Council. They were not proud now. They wore black instead of red. General Korthak stepped forward to speak. "We mocked them," he said quietly. "We laughed at the humans. We called their soldiers soft. We called their beasts dumb." He looked around. But it was the ones with fur and loyalty who broke our will. Silence filled the hall. Then he added, "We thought they were animals, but they fought like warriors and died like heroes." The memorial back on Tharxis, the human camp, no longer looked like a battlefield. It had become a garden. In the center of the camp stood a stone statue, a dog in armor sitting proudly. Beneath it, a metal plate read, for Ghost, and for every loyal soul who stood between us and death. Around the statue were smaller stones, each marked with a name, each left with small tokens, dog tags, boots, photos, and folded flags. Every morning, handlers came and touched the stones. Every evening, new flowers appeared. No one saw who placed them. But everyone knew. A new home. The surviving dogs weren't sent back to Earth. They stayed. Not because they had orders, but because they had purpose. They became guardians for frontier colonies, search partners for missing children, protectors in refugee zones. One even learned to carry messages in war zones faster than drones, and everywhere they went, people whispered the same thing. That's not just a dog, that's a soldier. One final scene, Captain. Decker sat near the edge of the old camp, staring at the sunset. Beside him was a small pup, young, clumsy, ears too big for its head. Decker tossed a rock. The pup chased it, tripped, and barked proudly. Mills walked over with a soft smile. "You sure you're ready to raise another?" Decker looked at the pup. "He's not Ghost," he said. Then he smiled. "But he's got the same fire." The pup trotted back and dropped the rock. Decker reached down, scratched behind its ears. "You ready to learn what it means to protect?" The pup wagged its tail, and the future began again. They came to war without tanks, without beasts, without fear. And when the galaxy laughed at their size, they unleashed hearts that beat only for loyalty. They weren't just animals. They were the reason the humans never lost. And in the silence after the final howl, the galaxy remembered their names.